We are talking now about Pakistan as a trusted seat for arbitration, both domestic and international. I'm going to just frame this issue with two key points. Firstly, why should Pakistan be bothered about this in the first place? What is the national interest in creating a safe arbitration seat as we're talking? And secondly, if there is a national interest in doing this, how is it to be done practically? So the first of those 2 points, what is the national interest in having a trusted seat for arbitration? And there are 3 core reasons why all of us here should be concerned about it. Firstly, there is an obvious benefit, a benefit so obvious we don't need to spend time on it, in actually having a working, efficient, functional system of alternative dispute resolution. We all know that, whether it's mediation, whether it's arbitration, there is a national interest in having disputes resolved efficiently and fairly and finally. And so in terms of efficiency, in terms of cost, innovation, expertise, the process itself has an inherent value. That's the first one, and it's obvious. But the second one is less obvious. It is now well established, beyond any question around the world, that if you develop an efficient system of alternative dispute resolution, you will thereby ramp up and improve your court system, because the two have a symbiotic relationship. It's not just a question of taking pressure off court lists. That is true. It's not just a question of removing cases from court. Whilst that is vitally important, what we have now seen is that if you develop an efficient, trusted arbitration system or dispute resolution ecosystem, as it's often called, you will thereby improve the standard of the court that is supervising the arbitration system. And in doing that, indirectly, you will improve standards of lawyers and standards of courts and standards of judges throughout, beyond the narrow realm of commercial dispute resolution. What you actually do is you instill in practitioners, both counsel and judges, international best practices. And I can give you one quick example of this. In England, in the 1990s, we had a major overhaul of our civil procedure system under the guidance of Lord Woolf, the famous Woolf reforms. They revolutionized civil procedure throughout the courts. But the Woolf reforms came just after the English Arbitration Act. It was the work that had been done on dispute resolution in arbitration that fed into court procedural reform. These are not just courts involving arbitration. These are the whole breadth of civil courts. What we saw in the Woolf reforms was a distillation of international best practice that had come, a lot of it, from arbitration and alternative dispute resolution. And in the process, we built a commercial court. It had been there before, but is now even more developed, which has become a model for international court resolution. It is a showcase for England, in the same way as Pakistan, if it were to develop a commercial court, would have its own showcase. The English commercial court has, in terms of its users, 80% who are not from the UK. 80%. Because people are coming to England to use that process. And that leads me to the third reason why this is a question of national interest. So beyond the inherent worth of arbitration, beyond the impact it has on dispute resolution generally, it is now proven beyond question that if you have an effective, efficient system of arbitration, you will improve the international standing of your country. You will become a player in the international field, and you will bring in more foreign direct investment because capital is free-flowing, and it flows to wherever is perceived as safe. And having a recognized system of dispute resolution, of course, attracts that capital. And even beyond that, what we found in many centers, London is a classic example where this has been shown empirically, with an international center comes invisible earnings. People come to the country and they invest not just in law and in disputes, but in many different ways as an adjunct, as a side effect of the credibility that's being brought to the country by virtue of its dispute resolution system. So the conclusion of the 3 points is it is undoubtedly a question of national interest. Pakistan's no different from all the other countries that have experienced this. But that takes me to my second point, which I will just mention briefly, because this will be elaborated by the other speakers. If it's in the national interest, how does Pakistan achieve it? Do we carry on at these kinds of conferences, speaking to each other, having great lunches, snoozing just after lunch, and waiting for the next conference? How do we actually move on from this? In 2015, the Chartered Institute set out what have become known as the London Centenary Principles. 10 principles which they identified as critical in order to establish a trusted arbitration seat. The 10 principles begin with 2 that are absolutely critical. The first one is obvious, and that is a better arbitration law, obviously. You cannot do anything without really a radical change of the arbitration law. But beyond that, the second one actually is as important, and that is the judiciary. However good and polished and up-to-date your arbitration law is, ultimately, it is the judges who have to understand it. It is the judges who have to apply it. And I can tell you from bitter experience that there are many wonderful laws around the world which actually have not worked well because judges have still got to get to a level of buying into and fully understanding and embracing what are international norms. England suffered that initially when the 1996 Arbitration Act was first promulgated. It took time for the collective judicial mindset to catch up with the law. But Pakistan is blessed with a very strong judiciary, with very, very impressive judgments that have come out over the last 10 to 15 years, if not more.